Welcome to the REI Foundation Podcast, where we cover all the steps and strategies to make your real estate dreams a reality. Now your hosts, Jason and Peely.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the REI Foundation Podcast with Jason and Peely. Today, we welcome Michael Blank. How are you doing, Michael?
Good. Pleased to be here.
Awesome.
Hey, Michael. Good morning. How are
Jason.
you?
Good.
Good. Really excited to have you on the show today. And this is the first time that Peely and I will be stepping on each other's toes from far away. So Peely is currently in Hawaii today, and I'm in New Jersey. And that leaves Michael. Michael, where are you?
Northern Virginia.
Northern Virginia. So we've got everything covered today.
Perfect. Yay. So, Michael, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you first get started in real estate?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, I thought I was pretty smart when I was in my corporate software job. And then I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I'm like, I'm such an idiot. It's not how much money you're earning or having a bank. It's how much passive income you have from that. And it was like, it hit me like a 2x4. And it really changed my whole financial outlook. And that's why I started looking around. Now, at the time, I had a good amount of money through a software IPO. And I said, I know, I'll just quit my job and then just implement what Kiyosaki has in his book, right? So I needed a cash flow business and I needed real estate. And I didn't associate the two necessarily together. So I decided on the cash flow side to get into a restaurant, a pizza chain, essentially, because I knew some guys who were in the franchise business and were doing very well. So I said, oh, that's great. My big idea is to go into the restaurant business. That's my passive income. And I hired a guy who ran all these things, and I started building and buying this chain of restaurants. And on the real estate side, I just started flipping houses. So I signed up with a local mentor. He was a wholesaler, and he taught how to market, how to negotiate. And I said, I can do better than that. I can just rehab the thing. So I kind of did that a little bit as a side gig. And I didn't really get serious with real estate until probably 2009. So I did a handful, kind of as a side thing. I was really consumed with the restaurants. I did go to some apartment building boot camp early on, and I worked at it really hard for the first 9 months, and then put the whole real estate thing on hold, and just to focus on the restaurants until about 2009, when I started getting into flipping houses much more as a business. That's when things got really serious. And it didn't dawn on me until afterwards that flipping houses really was not passive income, right? And so I just started scratching my head again and going, what really is? And that's when I remembered my apartment building training in 2007, and that's when I started looking for apartment buildings. So that's how, to answer your question, is how I sort of got into real estate. And I tried a lot of different things in my quest for financial freedom. And the restaurant thing completely blew up my face. Instead of actually being permanently retired, I was in the state of semi-retirement for about 6 years. It was fantastic. And then it turned rapidly to the point where I ended up losing 95% of my net worth through that experiment. So if I can spare people from that experiment, then maybe I've done something good in the world.
That's amazing. It's amazing how many people have read Rich Dad, Poor Dad and had that same result come to their mind of, man, I thought I had it all together, but actually completely off point. Okay, let me start over. And we all have very similar tracks. I'm not sure if you know, Peely and I actually met in the bar business some 14 years ago, worked in bars, still have a restaurant today. We know that's a more active approach to life than most people want. So for you to move away from house flipping, what was really the first start for you to get yourself into multifamily when you discovered that house flipping was ultimately just you having to find one project with another just to continue your income?
Well, in my head, I knew that I wanted to be in apartment buildings. That's why I got started in 2007. And I really spent 9 months really heavily marketing in Texas. I probably looked at 150 properties until the point I had a verbal agreement on an 82 unit in College Station. At that point, I had to make a decision. And I said, I can't pursue this because of what's going on in the restaurant. So in my head, I knew apartments was where I'm going to go. So when the crap hit the fan in the recession, I kind of stabilized. And in 2009, I kind of went, shoo, okay, I'm down to 4 restaurants now. Everything's looking pretty good. And so I started getting into real estate. And at the time, there was such I got distracted with shiny objects, with a short-term opportunity that in end effect did not get me closer to my goal, which was permanent retirement. Right? There was this huge amount of foreclosures on the market in DC area, and the retail market was recovering rapidly. So you get stuff at $80,000, put $30,000 in it, and sell it for $230,000. Right? There's a huge gap. I was like, my gosh, I gotta drive my truck through that. Versus kind of going, yeah, but what was your original goal, right? The original goal was financial freedom, not to flip houses, right? It should be an end to a means, and it was just kind of, I don't know, a means to what end, I wasn't exactly sure. So that's what I did. It distracted me for about three years, and then I sort of accidentally got into a 12 unit in DC that was brought to me by one of my wholesalers, and I was like, I remember now this thing I wanted to do one day when I grew up. And I got into this thing, and then it just occurred to me, and if I keep doing this active house flipping stuff, it's not really what I want to be. Why don't I just do more of this, of this apartment building stuff, which is a lot less work, right? And so that's for me mentally when the shift happened. And then when I essentially made that shift is when the final decline of my restaurants happened, which then took up the next 3 years of my life to try to extricate myself out of that. And it's during this time where I had a fundamental transformation in my mind about what I wanted to do with myself. And it was really, I really associated myself with my success or the lack thereof. It's like who I felt I was. And I was really looking for financial freedom for myself, I guess, and my family, but it was really about me. And so it was very frustrating for me to fail so miserably at this. And I think the shift came when I kind of let go of that, right? So my worth is not my net worth, right? It's I'm disassociated from that, and that was very freeing at the same time. And I said, what am I going to do? And I said, you know what? I'm going to try to help people raise money and do apartment buildings, because I've raised money for house flips. I probably had $1 million deployed for the house flips. I raised some for the restaurants and for the apartment buildings, and people kept asking me how I do this kind of stuff. And I said, you know what? I'm going to start sharing my knowledge with this stuff, even though it really wouldn't have solved my financial issues at all, and then really focus on multifamily. So it was really, I say, a letting go of all that and really thinking, less about me and how can I help people around me. And it's funny when you do that, all of a sudden, I guess maybe success follows you, even though you're not really looking for it. That's kind of what I found, but regardless, that's kind of what happened in the depths of the storm.
Sure. You give us so many different directions to go here. I guess one of the things you said is that multifamily is actually easier than house flipping, but people are going to see, well, an 82 unit building or a 12 unit building, well, that's so much more risky. It takes so much more work, so much more effort than actually
so much more money.
One house, so much more money. So how could that possibly be easier?
Yeah, I mean, I thought so too, right? I mean, there's two things that I had a big problem with multifamily. One is I needed a lot of money. And at that time, I didn't have any money at all. And number two, I felt like it was an advanced strategy, something that I would graduate to after flipping a bunch of houses. What I found was, number one, I didn't have any money. So if I wanted to get started, I need to figure out how to overcome that obstacle. Now, and I did learn the art of raising money through the house flips. And what was empowering about that was when I first started doing that, and I got the first investor to kind of say, "Yeah, I'm good for $25,000." I was like, "Really? You sure?" And then it dawned on me. I was like, "My gosh, maybe if this guy was dumb enough to invest in me, I can find another guy and another guy and another gal." And I was like, "Holy cow! My ability to do something is only limited by my ability to find deals and raise the money, not by my own lack of funds." Right? And most people don't believe that's possible, right? So when we're thinking multifamily, they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna save money for the next 5 years and then I'll get started." No, learn the art of investing, because the truth is, people are having a hard time finding any kind of yield, and everyone's really happy with a 5 or 6% return in the stock market. And multifamily syndicators routinely are returning upwards of 13% per year on things, and it's staggering, right? So you're actually doing people a service by presenting them with opportunity, and most people just don't understand that that's possible. And when I show them just some simple ways to do that and what's possible, they kind of go, "Huh, interesting." right? And then on the experience side, I was really disappointed about how much credit I got for my track record as a house flipper. I would call up brokers and they go, yeah, Michael, but how many apartment buildings have you done? I'm like, well, none, but I flipped 3 dozen houses. They're like, yeah, now I'll talk to you later. Call me when you have some experience. Right. And it was amazing that I got hardly any credit for my house flipping. And now, having taught others how to overcome that, there are some simple techniques and education, language, and scripts to use that allows you to overcome the lack of experience to the point where, when you use the right words and have a certain degree of confidence, you're not going to be asked about your track record. You're not going to be asked for proof of funds, and that's all a function of essentially training and shifting your mind. So the bottom line is this: you don't need experience, and you don't need your own cash to get started multifamily.
Wow. So we're really big on mentorship here, and this is kind of following what you're going through or going with. If say I'm a newbie and I have never done a multifamily before, and I came to you, I'm like, Michael, could you help me out here? I really want to get into multifamily. How do I do it?
Normally the progression is like this. I normally advise people to consume all the free content that's out there. So that's my website. I probably have the biggest archive of articles, YouTube videos, and podcasts on the subject of multifamily. Bigger Pockets is a great resource, and there's a few other people out there as well. Consume all the content. I think it really comes to this. You have to come to a decision point. Okay? You have to decide. And in order to decide, you have to have a certain amount of information. Hey, is this right for me? Is it possible? Can I see myself doing this stuff? And I found that when a person decides to pursue a course of action, and you guys are a perfect example of that. You guys sitting there, you've done a bunch of stuff, and you evaluate, all of a sudden you're like a light bulb goes off. You're like, okay, I'm going to do this. Now, you don't have all the answers yet, but if you haven't decided yet, I'm not going to recommend that you buy my online course or that you sign up with a coach, okay? Because you haven't truly decided yet. On the other hand, once you've decided that this is what you want to do, the course of action becomes very easy, right? And you can always tell whether a person has decided or not. And they may lie to themselves or lie to me. They go, yes, I'm going to do this. And then there's no action after that. And to me, that's a very strong indicator that the person actually has not actually decided. They're probably lying to themselves. And like I said, to me, it happens to me occasionally, even though I interview people, before they come on as a coaching student. But on the other hand, if people have truly decided, and this is something that you can't tell from the outside, every person knows whether they have, there's no other response other than action after that. And once a person has come to that, at that point, the first step is to get education. Right? So it's not complicated, and you may have to invest in your education. And some people need more hand-holding than others, and some don't. Some have more means to hire a coach, and some don't. It doesn't really matter. The point is you do have to invest minimally in your education so that you build up a skill level, use the right language, and you develop that confidence. And with the right training, that can happen in a course of 30 days. I mean, from a bumbling idiot to, I can actually call BS on a broker because they don't know how to underwrite their own deal, right? It's actually surprisingly easy to acquire. But if you don't, then you're going to bumble around for a while. And, I've done it before, especially when you don't have the money to do something, you just bumble around and make a bunch of mistakes. And if time is on your side, then just bumble through it. Make a bunch of mistakes. You'll eventually come out okay in the end, But if you want to fast track it, then the more you spend, the more you focus on your education, the faster you get there, and the more likely you are to avoid the bigger mistakes.
Yeah, that's great. And you're exactly right. If you have your mind made up and you know where you want to go and you want to get into multifamily investing, you can get there. And you can do it by yourself. Sure, you can go out there, but why have this huge learning curve where it's going to take you maybe 3 months, but maybe it might take you 5 years? Why are you going to go through that learning curve, have to figure out all the mistakes when you can follow steps other people have done? And there's so much information on your site on Bigger Pockets where you can educate yourself, find people around you that are doing what you want to do, and they can keep you on the track. And no matter what track you're on, you're ultimately going to have missteps, but they're not going to allow you to get too far off the track. They're going to bring you back, and you're going to call up and say, Michael, I'm in this situation. I made this mistake. What would I do in this situation? You say, okay, listen, it's not that big of a deal. Just take this course correction, and here you are back on track. And that's invaluable for sure. Now, for this, tell us currently a little more about your investing strategy. What are you looking for today in multifamily? Where do you like to invest? just a little bit more maybe about something that you've at least worked on recently or something you're looking to do shortly coming up?
My investing strategy has been to invest together with my students or my ecosystem. So I have a program that allows people, gives them the tools and the knowledge to analyze deals and pre-negotiate a deal and then bring the deal to me for partnering. Because it's so hard to find deals right now, right? So I was like, rather than me calling up a bunch of brokers, why don't I train a bunch of people to do it for me?
That's great.
And once I rolled it out last year, we actually got a deal. It was a 69 unit in Memphis, and it was a gentleman by the name of Patrick Duffy brought me the deal, and he had done an outstanding job analyzing and researching the deal. We then worked out a joint venture agreement with them and put it under contract, raised the money for it, and closed on it in mid-April. And since that was released, like the floodgates have opened, and people have just started submitting deals to the deal desk. So the deals are out there. I think that my observation is that even though I teach people how to raise money and I spend most of my time on that topic, which is, I'm sure, very useful, what's even more useful is if you do it for them, right? Because people are lazy. They're like, why should I raise money if you didn't do it for me? You know? So what I'm finding is it's empowering people to go out and do something. I think a lot of times we sit there and we go, and we can't overcome certain challenges in our head. Now, you guys are action takers because I interviewed you on my podcast. You're just kind of like, you just start walking and you don't even know what the hell you're doing and you're just kind of bumbling forward. You know? But most people, they think of the road ahead and they're like, well, I can't figure this out. I can't figure that. I don't know how to do that. So I'm just not going to bother. Right. And so taking this objection off right away, it's like, you find a good deal. You find a deal, I'll do the rest is kind of my tagline. And people kind of go, okay, well, the raising money thing was a pretty big problem for me. You know what? I can find some deals. Let me call some brokers. And they call up brokers. And then, of course, analyzing deals is a skill they can learn within a short period of time. And they kind of do it and they start making offers. And all of a sudden they get a live one. They're like, ooh, I just got a counter offer. I was invited to submit a letter of intent. And that's very empowering for people. So back to answer your question, my strategy is at this point to help other people do their deals because I'm all about helping people do their first deal. That first deal is so powerful. In fact, I have something called the law of the first deal that says if you do a multifamily deal of any size, and that includes a duplex, you will have replaced your income in 2 to 3 years. I've probably interviewed 4 dozen different entrepreneurs that have done this, and I haven't found a single exception to this rule yet. It's amazing. So you do your first deal, and you always, and the second and third follow in rapid, almost automatic succession, and you almost have to work hard not to do your second deal. It just kind of happens. It's like knocking over the first domino, which is really big and really hard to do, and then just kind of boop, it just knocks over everything else after that. So the key to financial freedom, which is what I want to help people achieve, is the first deal. I don't care. You want, own 500 units in 5 years. Don't talk to me about that. Let's talk about your deal. How big is it? Where is it? How much money do you have to raise? How are you going to get to that first deal? What does it look like? That's what I want to know. And so I'm focused like a laser on the first deal. So even if I can help someone who brings me a deal, get them in a deal, and they remain a general partner, that's their first deal. Even if they haven't raised the money themselves or all of it, it's still a first deal. And it empowers them. It expands their comfort zone. Their confidence is like, I've seen it over and over again. And that's what I like. That gets me really jazzed up. Doing my own deal, it doesn't really excite me. It's just a lot of work, right? So what's much more exciting is to help the other guy do their first deal. That's what I really like.
That is
incredible.
Amazing. That's amazing. That's what we talk about a lot here. Like how do people go from 0 to, like you said, people want to do 500 off the bat, but it's always that first deal that really stumps people, and you get them over that hurdle. That's awesome.
I'm all for thinking big, right? There's a lot for thinking big. The problem is a lot of times when people are thinking big, they're disconnecting the things they need to do today from their ultimate goal. Oh, I want to own 1,000 units in 5 years. And whenever I hear that, I'm like, oh, good grief, right? Good. I commend you for thinking big. A lot of people think small. Okay, that's a different problem. But thinking big, getting to 1,000 units, where do you start with someone like that? Where do they even start? It's so overwhelming. You need to break it down a little bit. So sometimes when I hear people say, I want to own 1,000 units, and I don't want to squelch their enthusiasm. Oh, Michael's knocking me down. He thinks, he wants me to think smaller. No, that's not at all. I just want you to connect what you need to do right now this week with your ultimate goal. And if you can't break your goal down to something smaller than 1,000 units, you're not going to make it, right? How would you do that? So that's my only problem with thinking big.
Yep. And you get so many things from that first property too, because one, you've gone through the process, you've built your credibility, you've gained your confidence, and it creates this domino effect where things just start flying at you after this. So it is very tough, but it will be 10 times tougher to get to the first one than it's going to be to the second one. And it's going to keep reducing that path. So you're 100% right. Yep. And maybe you could talk a little bit. So people who have no deal record, have no deal track, have not raised money before, but now here they are, they're trying to get into their first deal, and now they're trying to raise money. How can they talk to investors about the deal and be credible? Because they maybe what mindset or what can they bring to the table to offer up some kind of credibility?
So before you approach an investor, you have to have a certain skill level. And you have to have you're using certain language and a certain confidence, right? Now, if you learn to analyze deals, which is one of the first things I teach when you come on into my courses, that sits at everything else. Being able to analyze deals, and I have a tool for that called the syndicated deal analyzer. It makes it really easy to do the easy things, but it's very sophisticated to model very sophisticated situations with investors and structuring different deals. But that is at the heart of everything. It's the heart of you obviously need to make offers, but it also improves your language. And with it improves your confidence. So typically for the first 30 days of the program, you're educating yourself and you're learning how to analyze deals and to build up that confidence level. So when you can always measure your confidence level by how people react to you. Very simple, right? So if you're talking to a potential investor or a broker and they ask you for your track record or proof of funds, boom, you're just sounding like a newbie. It's a very simple measure. On the other hand, if you're not asked for that, you pass the newbie test, right? And so you want to get to that point as quickly as possible so that you're not being labeled as a newbie. You may get some other questions and objections, but you're not going to be asked about your personal track record and your, and the personal proof of funds, right? Because it's not really about you, it's about your team, right? For example.
Yeah.
Now, the biggest challenge with raising money goes like this. It's like a catch-22 problem, right? People go, oh, okay. Now, I don't have a deal under contract right now, so there's nothing I can use to talk to an investor. Yep, that's a problem. On the other hand, oh my gosh, I just got really lucky and I just got my offer accepted, and now I don't have enough money. I don't have enough time to raise the money. Yep, that's also a problem. And they're like, can't be solved, can't be done. I'm done. And I've solved this though. So the solution to that is to basically make up a deal. And I call it the sample deal package. And it's basically you take a deal, you analyze it, and you create an investor package about it. You put your narrative and your business plan, your projections, your photos. You put everything in there, and everything is real except for one thing. You don't actually have it under contract. It's not your deal. Now, you tell the investor that, but the point is you're using this now as a conversation piece. Now you have a live deal to talk about. Here's a deal. Okay, it's not mine, but it's a deal anyway. And I can use it as a way to actually now schedule meetings and reach out to investors. And you say, look, here's this deal. I don't have it on a contract right now, but when I do, it'll be substantially like this. I want you to go review this deal and ask me any questions you have, any concern. They do that. So they'll ask you questions about you, about your team, about this deal, about why the return is like this. How long is the term? When do they get their money back? And they're asking all these questions, and you're addressing all this stuff up front before you actually have a deal under contract. And your goal is basically a verbal commitment from people. They'll go, you know what? If I like this a lot, you've addressed my concern, answered my question. I like this deal. If you find a deal that's substantially like this, I'm in for $50,000. And you get a verbal commitment, right? And so you get enough of these verbal commitments so that when you actually put a real deal on a contract, all you got to do is call your investors and go, remember this conversation we had, 8 weeks ago? I got a real one. I'm going to send you the real deal package tomorrow. And it looks familiar. They've already asked you all the questions. And within a day, they can say, yes, I'm in. No, I'm not in. And so within a week, you'll have your money raised, right? Isn't that a better approach to making offers?
So for all of our listeners out there, I want you to stop, rewind, or go back about 10 minutes and re-listen to what Michael just said. He just basically gave you the key to getting your foot in the door. That was amazing. That was, mind blowing for your average investor trying to get in.
Well, the key there too is that people have to be comfortable with you, because now you have Michael who was in the tech industry, then Michael who's the restaurant guy, and now Michael who was the house flipper, but now Michael's going to do apartments. So all of a sudden, if you were just showing up after you got this deal, they first have to get comfortable with you and the concept of you investing in apartments, and then qualify that you've put your time into it to learn what you're doing and being specific with it. And then after that, commit to it. And you're right. You have no time to go through that process once you're under contract for the deal. So you need to basically set these parameters so people can understand what you're doing, understand what the feasibility is and what the upside is and why it's a great opportunity for them. So when the deal comes, they've already qualified you as a person.
That's right. Yeah, and it's very easy. Now, you kind of picked the harder route. I remember in your 90-plus building that you did not have a lot of investors lined up, and you just hit the phones, and you were stressing out. I'm like, oh my gosh, just Jason guy, he's crazy. He's so much stress and trying to raise money in like 35, 40, 45 days. And you just got it done just because that's the kind of person you are. But the average person, including me, would find that highly stressful. I would feel much better. Hey, I'm going to buy a 10 unit. I know I need $200,000 raised for it. If I have $200,000 in commitments, boy, I'm really confident making that offer. And even if one of my investors drops out, well, now I can hit the phones and replace that $50,000. I can see myself doing that. But starting from scratch, basically, oh my gosh, right? And so that keeps a lot of people from making offers, that fear right now. And I don't blame them. I mean, why, if I need $250,000 to buy a deal, why would I make an offer on something I don't have the investors for? Well, I wouldn't, right? Because I don't see how that's possible. But that's why we want to get verbal commitments from the investors up front. And I actually go a little step further. I sometimes have my investors sign a one-page letter of intent, which is legally meaningless. It just formalizes the conversation. I, so-and-so, am interested in investing $50,000 in a deal, pending me seeing the actual deal and getting whatever legal documents. And they sign it, and it formalizes the relationship. It just kind of forces that a little bit more and make sure that the investor's a little more serious about what they just told you. And better yet, you can take your 5 letter of intents to invest, and you can slap them in your cover letter for making offer almost as a form of proof of funds. Look at the investors I have behind me, right? So there's dual purpose.
That's great. I really like that. That's great. That's incredible. And you could push that topic a little bit, because there's going to be people out there who say, well, I want to raise money, but I don't know anybody with money. So what do I do? Tell us how maybe there's money everywhere. And if you talk, you'll bring that to you.
So when I speak in front of RIA meetings, for example, let's say there's 100 people in the room. I love doing this poll because exacts this thing. There's no money out there. I don't know anyone. And I say, hey, if anyone with more than $25,000 to invest either in cash or stocks or IRA in real estate, raise your hand. And all these hands go up. Anyone with more than 50,000, some hands go down, but still semi up. More than 100,000, some hands go down. You add all the money in the room, that 100 people, it's like in the multiple of millions. So all you got to do is go to your local RIA and start attending these meetings and chit-chatting with people and finding the people with money. That's the easy one. If you really live in a box, right, and you don't know anyone else, that's the easiest way to do it. The second way is to get referrals from people you know. Everyone knows someone, okay? Now, those someones, if you're living in a mobile home park, maybe you don't know anyone with money, okay? I get that. But those people do know somebody, and those people know somebody, right? So you're networking. You're just building relationships. So you ask, the poor neighbor next door, hey, here's what I'm doing. I'm really excited about this thing. And they go, oh, that's interesting. I said, yeah, do you know anyone who might be interested in a conversation? And they might go, well, my boss might, he's got a rental property, and now his boss might not actually be in a position necessarily to invest either or want to, but this guy now might know the guy with $50,000, right? So you're constantly networking. And if you have a network of high net worth individuals, good for you, right? You have a step up. And for those who don't, it's just going to take a little longer, right? That's the bottom line. That's great.
That's great. So we're going to take a little step now in the direction of the program here. We always love to get a little more about how you set your life up. I guess one of the big questions we like here is, so you're doing all these things. You've done tech, you've done restaurants, you're doing multifamily. What is your big why for doing all of this?
Well, my big why initially was financial freedom. That's what I wanted, right? So I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I said, I want that. I want to be able to do whatever I want, when I want, with who I want. That's what I want. So that was my quest. Now, my efforts have been a little misguided, perhaps. Maybe they cost me a lot of money and cost me a lot of time. But the point is, I feel like I've done so many different things. I've done software. I've done restaurants. I've even had a short sale negotiation company. I flipped houses. I had some rentals. I did multifamily. I'm missing. I traded stocks and options for about 18 months. So that was pretty fun. I've done all this stuff, but there's a problem with each one of those strategies, with the exception of multifamily. there's like everything that there's a problem with this or that or this or that is all gone with multifamily. The advantages are so overwhelming that this is the number one way to achieve the goal of financial freedom. The only challenge is to overcome the objections we talked about, lack of experience and lack of money. And that's what I'm trying to change, is the perception that you need experience and money to get started multifamily.
That's great.
Wow.
That's great.
So where do you see yourself, your business in 5 years, 10 years? Give us a look into your future.
Yeah. So, 5 years is probably hard for me to do. I normally work in 90-day and 12-month timeframes. I feel like that's something I can control, though. You can always dream a little bit, right? But it's hard for me to dream specifically. I know. A lot of people say you got to be very specific and attach a time frame to it. I don't know. I'm not sure, but I would really, and again, I just want to really impact as many people as possible by educating them and helping them do transactions. And now we're also going to start, raising money from those people. I'm going to start and there's different ways to achieve financial freedom, right? One is to be the syndicator yourself, to be the entrepreneur. But there's other ways. If you're a high net worth individual, you also want financial freedom for the same reasons that the guy with no money wants to, and they just happen to have more money, but they still hate their job. They're tired of being an attorney and working their butt off, and they want to get out of the partnership. Okay, so how do you help them? Well, you help them by educating them on how to invest, right? And so we're going to do that. I'm going to start doing that as well. So really, educating the masses, as many as I can, so that achieve financial freedom. Why, right? Why? So that we can begin to live a life of significance, perhaps. So live a life on purpose, which is really hard to do when you're working 50 hours a week. And you come home and you're tired, and you take care of the kids, put them to bed, go to watch TV, go to sleep, get up, do it again. It takes you all weekend just to recuperate so you can do it again on Monday. It's difficult to say, hey, what are your passions? What are you really meant to do, right? How are you going to make the world a better place? What the hell are you talking about, Michael? I don't even know what the hell you're talking about. And that's a problem, right? If I look at the people that have replaced their income with multifamily, they have a problem now. They're like, and so the couple of coaches I brought on, they've both replaced their income, and they're still struggling with, what do I do with myself? And all of a sudden, because there's this big vacuum in their brain that was previously consumed by by providing for their family, which they've now checked off, it now makes room for other thoughts, and they're starting to think, they're starting to think bigger. And as you start bigger, it goes beyond yourself now. And now you can start impacting other people, right? And if more people can do that, maybe the world would actually be a better place.
Yeah,
that's awesome. See, those are goals. You don't have a time limit. You don't need it. That's an amazing, amazing goal. Thank you so much for that. Another question we'd like to ask the people that come on our podcast is, do you have a morning routine? Would you be willing to share it?
Yeah, actually, I started that 2 years ago after reading The Miracle Morning for Hal Elrod. Yeah, and I was never a morning person. The earliest I could ever get out of bed was probably 7:15. And, Hal postulates that you can program your body the night before. It says, you know what? You don't need 8.5 hours of sleep. You need 7 hours of sleep, and you're going to be fine, which I thought was a bunch of horse manure because I tested this before. And then I retested it, and it worked. And it was amazing. And so I've added like an extra hour to my day, and I can do a lot in an hour. So that it was a transformational. And because you're not doing emails in that 1 hour, you actually have the ability to reflect and to think more strategically. And that makes a huge difference, because you're after 9 a.m., you're just putting out fires and you're doing this. You can't really think strategically. You don't really know if the task I'm doing right now is actually going to get me to where I want to go. And that was what was missing for me. So that's been a huge addition to my morning routine, and I highly recommend it.
Hal Elrod and Miracle Morning definitely changed mine and Jason's life. It's
amazing.
For anybody that's listening out there, pick up that book yesterday and read it.
So if there's a real estate investor, or we'll say someone who knows they want to start investing in real estate, and maybe they have no experience, this may be even the first thing they've ever listened to, what would be one actionable step they can take today to take that first step into real estate? Yeah,
educate yourself, right? So check out my site, themichaelblank.com. check out the products I have and the programs I have, the training I have. But there's others out there, right? Just, check us all out and see who you like best. You might get along with someone else better than me, and who knows. But the next step really is to educate yourself. If you've really decided, that's a thing. But you really ask yourself if that's something you want to do. Next step is educate yourself. And what that does is it shifts your entire perspective. Because once you have knowledge, tools, techniques, you're like, oh my gosh, now it expands your horizon about what you think you can do and also your goals, right? They're going to be totally different when you start and when you finish. So the educational piece is so required because it makes everything, it clarifies everything for you.
That's great.
Nice.
That's great.
Nice. So you just mentioned your website. Where are other places people can find you?
Well, I think a good next step for the listener is to download my free ebook. It's related to raising money. It's called The Secret to Raising Money to Buy Your First Apartment Building, right? Kind of apropos. And in the back, there's an appendix. There's a sample deal package in the back of it, because I talk about some of these things in more depth. And then the appendix has a sample deal. That's probably a good next step. And that's at themichaelblank.com/ebook. Or just go and then just check out all my other articles and YouTube videos and my podcast if they're interested in learning more, to help them decide if that's right for them.
Oh, that's great.
Wow.
We'll put that in the show notes. So, and before we do let you go, we always like to end with one thing. We always like to get some words to live by from our guest.
Words to live by. One of my favorite quotes, and I'm gonna maul it, is by Tony Robbins. It's in the moments of decision that your destiny is shaped. And I really believe that. Every time I go back to what propelled someone to take action, it was a moment of decision. So I encourage everyone to really think about that and decide. And from that, everything will flow. Once you truly decide, things will just start becoming reality from that point. So the moment of decision really does shape your destiny.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Michael. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Well, this is the REI Foundation podcast with Jason and Peely. Thank you so much for listening. Bye now.
Thanks for tuning into the REI Foundation podcast. Check back next time for more awesome tips and strategies to launch your new you in real estate.